Hey, speaking of lies that are spread by Republicans, George Santos, this guy it's literally like is it the id of the Republican Party just sort of like escaped its body and is just running around now naked?
Yeah.
This is amazing. George Santos just recently appointed to two committees in the House. They're not terribly substantial committees. One's like the small business
Science and tech, then the other, yeah.
Yeah, the other one's like some tech thing. And, as he said the other day on the Steve Bannon show, he doesn't care where he goes. He's going to give 110%. I believe he's going to give 110% because we know 110% doesn't exist. Yeah. He's going to make it up. And because that's what he's apparently very good at. Just to be clear, Santos, just where we're at with him at this point, local Republicans have called for his resignation, of course, after he was inaugurated. They could have done it beforehand. Kevin McCarthy now says he has a few questions about Mr. Santos's background.
Perhaps the fact that didn't he claim that either he or one of his campaign workers was literally McCarthy's chief of staff?
That was one of the questions.
Hard to keep
Apparently,
track.
Another one is Santos has a small business, which is
he's
called
on the small business committee. Yes,
and it's called Devolder organization, which is the fake name that he's been using apparently off and on for the past several years. And on financial disclosures, Devolder organization paid him $700,000 in between dividends of between $1 and $5 million in 2021, I think it was. The business, according to the New York Times, has no public-facing presence. In other words, no website, none of this. I mean, it's just like a loan-out company. I have that from show business. Mr. Santos has provided little information about its operations, saying only that he did deal building and specialty consulting for a network of wealthy clients. However, on the financial disclosure form filed last September, there is a requirement that you have to list any client who you have charged more than $5,000 to. And either he has no clients that he has charged $5,000 or more to, which is pretty amazing for a company that made somewhere between 1.7 and $5.7 million. We have a lot of small clients, me personally, because it doesn't sound like he has any other payroll that he pays out. Or he's just not listing who gave him more than $5,000. Then there's all the other lies about how he worked for Citibank and Goldman Sachs. All of that's fake. But here, this may be the worst.
Wait, which one? The one where he maybe allegedly stole $3,000 from a GoFundMe for a disabled veteran to get surgery for his dog's tumor?
Yes. And the story, I don't think we have video on that story. We have video
houses, on everybody. Let's
yeah. So
apparently, who hasn't, right?
In May of 2016, this is from the Oyster Bay Patch, that local sort of like online thing. A guy named Richard Althoff was living in a tent, unhoused, in Howell, New Jersey. He had a service dog named Sapphire. The dog was sick. He managed to go see a vet, another New Jersey vet, and retired police officer who said, "I'll help you go to a vet." They got to the vet and they realized that this is going to be an expensive thing. And I think the vet said, "Oh, I know a guy who has a help pets charity." A guy named Richard Devolder, who, as we now know, is Santos. Santos sets up a GoFundMe and then basically walks off. It's a long story, but walks off with the $3,000 because he says, "Oh, your dog can't be treated anyways. So I'm going to keep that money and give it to another dog." which is
the dog in him.
Yeah.
Got that dog in me.
He's got that dog. He's got that scammer dog in me.
But apparently, George Santos's former friend, a guy named Gregory Morey-Parker, was telling this story to Anderson Cooper, and there's more. Remember that whole thing about Santos saying, well, I'm not Jewish, but I'm Jewish.
Right.
Well, it turns out he's a little bit motivated to be Jewish. Here is that interview on Anderson Cooper.
Who is this guy and how long has he been this way? Joining us now, a one-time friend and roommate of his, Gregory Morey-Parker. Gregory, I really appreciate you being with us. So you knew him as Anthony Devolder from 2013 to 2018. How long did you actually live together?
We were only roommates for a few months. And I also knew him as Anthony Zebrovsky.
So you knew him. Why did he say he had two names then?
Well, he used Zebrovsky for his Friends of Pets United, his GoFundMe. And he would say, oh, well, the Jews will give more if you're a Jew. And so that's the name he used for his GoFundMes.
And what was he having GoFundMes for back then?
He had a
pause it. I just want to say, good for Anderson Cooper for being like, I'm not going to even marinate
over that
in that response.
Yeah.
I think what they may ultimately find, again, we're speculating, but it is impossible to know. Like, we used to joke if George Santos is really his name, and apparently in some instances it was not. One has to wonder why he would be working under an alias. It's not just because the Jews are going to give you more money if your last name is Zebrovsky as opposed to Devolder. Because he could have just gone around as Zebrovsky everywhere, unless I guess he was in spaces where he didn't want to be perceived as a Jew.
He's diversifying his portfolio, please.
But it's interesting that he went back to Santos after his marriage to a woman, even though he's gay. It's almost as if there was something that marriage bestowed upon him that made him feel more comfortable in using his real name. Like, I don't know, maybe some immigration status. We don't know. But let's continue.
GoFundMes for back then?
He had a pet charity, Friends of Pets United. It was supposedly to help out with, sick animals and things like that. There's actually just an article released from one of my reporters who's been interviewing me a lot, Jacqueline Sweet, about how he conned a homeless military vet out of $3,000 for his service dog. He was. Did
he actually have a pet charity? Did he have a pet?
He did like dogs, yes, but he never had any activity as far as taking animals to the vet or buying food or anything when I went to visit him when this so-called charity was active, when they were getting donations.
And he told you apparently a lot of lies about himself as well.
Yes.
What did he say?
He said he went to Baruch. He said he went to NYU. He worked at Goldman. He worked at Citigroup. I'm more apt to find, a sliver of truth than I am a lie, because everything he said to me was a lie. He lied about his family having a home on Nantucket and the Cape. He lied about his mother being, a powerful woman in finance when she was, worked in, a domestic capacity.
And did you actually meet his mom?
No truth. Yes, I was very close with his mother. I believe I sent a picture in of her.
Okay, yeah, so we're showing a picture. So wait, so she actually lived in the same apartment as you in Santos for a time, is that right?
Yes, she did. It was her, her daughter Tiffany, and then Anthony.
So did she know he was lying about stuff?
Yes, she would say, "Oh, Anthony and his stories," and it was kind of a shame because she was a very, very sweet woman, and she used to tell me that she worked her hands down to the bone, to just give him a better life.
Wait a second. So she referred to him as Anthony. Is it possible that George Santos is the fake name? And Anthony Devolder is the right name?
It might be. That would make sense.
Or he's just been using him for so long.
But the roommate knew him as Devolder. The roommate knew him as Devolder, so maybe Santos is the fake name.
Yeah. It's just crazy to me how we've talked about how GoFundMe and like the healthcare bills and the funds that are being raised on there are not oftentimes it ends up resulting in good outcomes because people get money, but more often than not it doesn't, and it's like a pitfall in our system that we have to have people resort to raising money for basic needs on this kind of website. And so like in many ways we talk, if Santos is the id of the Republican Party running around naked, he's also a creature and a creation of our culture, and like using the fault lines to scam people for his advantage, desperate people. Like there's nothing more kind of American than that, frankly.
I think ultimately this guy, I can't remember. There was a guy, I think they made it a movie 6 Degrees of Separation, who was going around pretending he was Sidney Poitier's son in New York, like I think in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And he stole, I think he went to Connecticut College and visited Connecticut College and stole somebody's like address book and just started calling people in the address book saying, I'm Sidney Poitier's son and I'm lost in the, like somebody stole my wallet and I need help. And like, he just sort of like went through the entire sort of like New York, just sort of like, living this sort of lie. And I have a feeling like this guy is like one of those guys. It's starting to feel.
He's Catch Me If You Can. Like he is the Leo. I mean, he's the
Frank Abagnale.
He's Frank Abagnale, but without the charm. And what's hilarious about that story too is that Frank Abagnale also fudged a lot of the details in his story about him being a con artist. So like that is who George Santos is. He's just not very charming or good at it.
Also, it was a lot easier to get away with con man type stuff, I think, before like the internet and communications across the globe.
Exactly. Much easier to sort of escape scrutiny.